Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail. Today we're going to share demonic encounter horror stories. First story, Haunted Hotel. Sounds super stereotypical, but oh well, it's real and scares me sometimes. On mobile, sorry. So I live in Pennsylvania, kind of rural, but not much since I live near the highway exits, so lots of fast food and such. I work at a hotel, and normally I work second shift, but I pick up third quite often due to the fact that I like working at night when no one can bother me. I've been told many times by older and other coworkers that the place is haunted, and it's even been proven many times to me. Right above the front desk is a room that you can hear banging on the floor from people running and kids laughing in there when it hasn't been rented out. Sometimes in hallways and kitchens a ghost comes up and will touch your arm or pull your hair or something. One time my coworker went to the room above the desk that day to see if it was clean or not, and it was. Later she had to go back up because she heard thuds and a shriek, and the drawers were all wide open, bed sheets flung everywhere, etc. Some nights the ghosts flip the deadbolts, and people who've already checked in try to open it and then realizes they can't, and when we go open it, it turns out fine. Tonight I'm working third, still sitting in the office, actually too spooked to go to anything. I was going around an hour ago for 30 a.m. to give the checkout folios, and I got to the room next to the haunted one, which this one's by the elevator. As I walked past, the door opened to the elevator. I wanted to scream. I turned pale, looked to see if someone was hiding inside, then kept going down the hall. I went back to go up the third floor. All was fine until I went to pass it again, and the light inside was shown through the floor as it was going down. I'm like, okay, someone probably getting on. As I get on after waiting, I go back to the first floor, and the guys I let in the pool were there, which spooked both of us. I asked if they had just seen anyone come out, and if they'd been in the pool the whole time until then, which they said, yeah, they were down there and didn't see anyone. I just responded with "Holy F" and explained. The one guy literally went wide-eyed and yelled out, "I told you," to his friend. I told them the stories I knew and how I just got so scared, and they just booked it to their room. They seemed frightened, and I'm still just so scared to go do anything. Sad face. Second story, hotel haunting. Hello all. I have posted here a few times, so I guess you can say I've had some unexplainable things happen to me in my life. Yesterday, at a family gathering, I was reminded of an odd experience that happened to my family on a vacation. I was quite young, but my mother and father's story reminded me of the feelings and occurrences that happened, and I began to recall it. When I was very young, my parents used to take my sister and me down to the very southern tip of the NJ shore. We would stay in motels/hotels on the beach and take a week away from life and enjoy the shore. This one year, we stayed in a hotel that we have stayed at before. I was about 4 and my sister was 6 at the time. The room was a long rectangle. Entryway, living room with a pull-out bed, kitchen, bathroom, and then a large back bedroom with beds. The first day we arrived, everything was normal. We headed to the beach and then went out to dinner. We came back later and all headed to bed. Being that we were both young, I slept in the bed with my dad, and my sister slept in the bed with my mom. The next morning we all woke up, and to our surprise, our front room seemed ransacked. I remember my father going downstairs to the manager and asking what the hell happened. The manager came up and said he was working the night shift and no one else was working. My father mentioned he seemed quite sincere. We have also stayed at that hotel before and had never had any issues. My father told him that if it were to happen again, that he would be calling the police and filing a complaint. My father said the manager agreed with him and seemed just as concerned himself about the situation. When we left for the beach that day, my dad told my mom to bring any jewelry she brought with her and did not leave any money lying around. When we came back from the beach, everything was fine in the room. It was just as we had left it, and the maid came while we were at the hotel pool right outside of her door. The day went along normally, as did the night out. Again, when we arrived back, our room was perfectly fine. Our sleeping arrangements were the same, and my father put the latch lock on that night. I remember he reminded me that we were safe and he would protect us. The next morning, our front room was ransacked again. Chairs were on the sofa, Some clothes were scattered on the floor, and the light was on. Also, the door was wide open. If someone had a key, they could not have entered because the latch lock. I remember our family being really confused about the situation. The only other window was a small window in the back room, and that was locked from the inside. My dad mentioned yesterday that he was, and still is, a light sleeper, and he was always confused that he never woke up to any forced entry or noise. My father went down and explained to the manager what was happening. They both were baffled, and the only other room they had available was too small for us. So, that night, my parents decided to test it. The latch locked the door, filled 2 suitcases with clothes, and placed them in front of the door, and put the 2 chairs in front of the door as well. My father was certain that as anyone was trying to get in, that he would hear it. The next morning, the chairs and luggage were neatly set aside, and the door was, again, slightly open. Nothing else was off in the room. Again, we were baffled. This continued the rest of the week there. My father put a note to the manager to please call him and let him know if any other people experienced what we experienced that week. We never got a call back. Life went on for us. I still cannot, nor can my parents, explain the phenomena that occurred in the hotel that week. Was it paranormal? Maybe. Was it some creep coming in to mess with us? If so, that's even more creepy than an intelligent ghost. Has anyone else had similar things happen? Edit. Update. I spoke to my mom last night again about the incident. She said that she and my father were too confused at the moment to think it was something paranormal, and they did not think someone was coming in a room. No one was being harmed, and it just seemed like something confusing at the time. As for photography, she mentioned that it wasn't the age of digital photography yet, and they wanted to capture the fun moments on the vacation with disposable one that they had. So no, unfortunately, no pictures were taken. Sorry, guys. Third story. Unexpectedly stayed at the most haunted hotel in town. I'd definitely go back. Back in October, I decided to treat my girlfriend to a night away at a popular British seaside town. The town is one of those historical areas which has its fair share of ghost legends and gothic tourism, so there was lots of touristy attractions such as ghost walks, which me and my girlfriend decided to go on. A bit of background information about the hotel. It is regarded as one of the oldest hotels in the town and is also a popular tavern among the locals. The inn itself had a rather creepy feel to it, but our room was modern and comfortable. The last place you'd imagine paranormal activity to occur. We set off on the ghost walk with a local guide who knew the paranormal hotspots. Unexpectedly at the time, we stopped directly outside our hotel. This is the most haunted hotel in town. Good luck if you're staying here, he cackled. He proceeded to tell us that there was a number of spirits that haunted the building and guests frequently experienced sightings and unexpected things. However, at the time, we was a bit drunk from dinner and we brushed the walk off as a typical tourist trap. We went to bed without any issues. I woke up later that night, paralyzed and with a sense of unease. I felt what I could describe as a strong, cold gale blowing around the room. Imagine being outside in strong windy weather. The sensation lasted for, I'd say, 15 seconds when suddenly it stopped and the room filled with a warm, relaxed sensation once again. I woke my girlfriend to tell her, and she brushed it off, saying it was probably sleep paralysis and a draft, so I believed her and went back to sleep. I thought nothing of it until we checked out. The receptionist asked us how its stay was and if there was any issues. Everything was perfect, but there was a real big draft in the room, I exclaimed as you would. Surprisingly, she casually left. No, that's not a draft. It's just a spiritual presence in the room. It happens all the time in that room, she casually reassured us. Now I'm really interested in paranormal stuff, hence why I'm on Reddit. So, I asked about the stuff in the hotel. She told us that everything the guy told us on the walk was indeed true, and the spirits are those of old landlords/locals whom help run the hotel and keep the guests safe. She told me lots of stories of how guests would stumble on the stairs and be caught by an unseen presence, as well as children's lost toys showing up at the point they're about to start crying. She even told us that one of the past landlady's spirit acts as a bouncer, causing troublemaking and aggressive guests to feel ill enough to leave. The receptionist seemed really happy and was used to the paranormal activity in the hotel, and says she regularly sleeps alone in the rooms without any worry. Obviously, this isn't that much of a scary ghost story, but more of an interesting experience. I'd definitely go back and stay in the hotel. Fourth story. Encounters at Marshall House Hotel, Savannah. Savannah, Georgia, is my favorite American city. After my first ghost tour there with my husband Pete, I knew on our next trip we had to stay at the Marshall House Hotel, the most haunted hotel in Savannah. It has an interesting past, including serving as a hospital during the Civil War. On our next trip, we stayed there and were on the fourth top floor. It was early November, and there weren't many people staying at the hotel. I was awakened on the first night by pressure on my forehead, and I thought it felt like 3 fingers. I then realized someone was feeling my forehead, like checking for a fever. I looked over at the clock, which is always the first thing I do when something goes bump in the night, just to make sure I'm not dreaming. It was 1:05. I put the covers over my head and went back to sleep. That same night, I woke up 3 times to what I thought was Pete thrashing his legs around and shaking the bed like he had restless leg syndrome or something. He doesn't and has never moved his legs around at night. I didn't turn over and look at him, but I said, "What are you doing?" And he muttered something about the horses. I thought, whatever, he's dreaming, and went back to sleep. It happened twice more, getting more violent every time with the thrashing motions, seemingly causing the headboard to bang rhythmically against the wall. The third time was really crazy, like he was running in his sleep like a dog dreaming, and the bed was shaking and flopping. Each time I asked, "What is going on?" and each time got an answer about the horses. Well, he had no memory in the morning of being awakened or dreams about horses or me asking him anything. And the headboard is bolted firmly to the wall. I couldn't get it to move to make that banging noise, so I can only conclude it was being knocked on. And what was moving the bed if it wasn't him? I wish I would have not pansied out and looked over there. The next night we were walking down the long hallway to our room after dinner and noticed someone at the end of the hall had a camera in their hand and was sticking it out their door, trying to record something. When they saw us coming, they darted back into their room. Later, we were watching TV around 11 to 1130, and we heard kids running down the hall and laughing. It was loud. We heard it over the TV and the loud air conditioner about 3 times. My first reaction was annoyance, because it was late for loudly running down the hotel hall. I looked out the peephole. No kids. Running and giggling again. 5 minutes or so later, looked out again, no kids. Pete almost called the front desk to complain that kids were running around, but didn't want to be that guy. He looked out the peephole and saw the room across from us open and shut its door real quick. We thought the kids must be in there, but a few minutes later, I peeped and saw a young couple come out of that room. The morning after, I asked the front desk if there were any children checked in last night. The clerk said there hadn't been any in weeks. Then she said, "Are you on the 4th floor?" I said yes. She said, "Oh yeah, you heard kids all right. Happens all the time." She said that Casper, the little kid ghost, likes to play with people in room 417, our room, which she didn't know. She and the bellman laughed and shook their heads in a knowing way. Pete is a total skeptic, by the way, but he couldn't deny hearing those kids running and laughing in the hallway. 5th story, haunted hotel room experience. Back in the winter of 2019, my partner and I settled down in a hotel for a few days before going on vacation elsewhere. I am somewhat sensitive. I've never seen a full-body apparition in reality and never had any physical paranormal happenings up until this point either. I've only ever felt feelings in environments. This hotel room was no different. Upon entering the hotel room, I felt a sense of calm when stepping in. However, there was also a sense of curiosity. I felt as though something was watching my partner and I. Over time, this feeling became more comfortable, to put it lightly. Over the course of the next few days, different feelings became more noticeable by the minute. Most of the feelings consisted of being watched. Eventually, I asked my partner on our second day there, "Do you feel anything off about this room?" Like a feeling. To this, They responded, no. Whatever was watching us noticed that I noticed them. That's when the experience turned from lingering to dark. Later that night in bed, I had a normal dream. I don't remember most of it, other than maybe one image of running curiously through a black hall of mirrors. Suddenly, as though if I blinked, I saw the hotel bed, my partner, and I sleeping. We were laying away from each other, but there was a mass in between us. A dark mass. It leaned in closer to me, and I felt what only can be described as a light body pressure on my back and an arm hold around my torso. The thing spoke to me in my sleep, more specifically in my mind. It had a male voice, but took on the voice of a mixture of my partner and my first ex-partner. It casually threatened that it was going to hurt my partner. I couldn't move, and my perspective was going back and forth from my own perspective of laying on one side of the bed to seeing a bird's eye view of the bed. I wasn't lucid enough to tell it to go away, but did have enough control to ask, why? Don't hurt us. It then responded, I don't want to hurt you, but I want to hurt your partner, and I am going to. I kept telling it not to better not to leave us alone. Then it threatened to hurt me as well. I could feel its intent, so I stopped responding. To my silence, it replied, good. Be glad that I am not hurting you. But your partner is going to hurt. Right about now. As soon as it said now, I jolted awake to the sound of my partner's blood-curdling scream. My partner's leg developed a Charlie horse cramp in their sleep at the same time the spirit stated now. I could still feel the spirit's energy upon waking, and one thought popped into my head. I told you. The next morning, we packed our bags for the vacation. I could feel whatever tormented my partner the other night watching us leave. I told my partner about the incident, and they jokingly told me to not sick any demons on them. They did believe me. I've never had any experience like that before or after. And as far as I know of, I've never had a spirit contact me so directly in my life before this. That spirit did not attach to me surprisingly. It stayed in the hotel room, and it's highly unlikely that I'll ever go back there again. Sixth story. I work at a hotel. Last night, everyone on floor 4 disappeared. I worked the night shift at the Southfield Inn. Other than handling late check-ins, I'm supposed to keep an eye on the security footage. I've seen my fair share of strange occurrences, drunk kids trying to break into the pool area at 2 a.m., a sweet little old lady having sex with her husband in an elevator. But nothing like last night. At around 3:30 a.m., while microwaving dinner, I checked the security cams. To my surprise, there were 2 people, a man and a woman, getting on the elevator. The man was wearing a tattered leather jacket and black gloves. The woman had blonde hair and pink lipstick. She looked like she had been crying for hours, mascara and red ringing her eyes. He pressed the button for floor 4. I switched the camera to 4. The elevator doors slid open, and they stepped out into the hall. Blondie still looked miserable, and Leather Jacket had his arm looped around her hips as if he owned her. He gestured to one of the doors to his left, and that's when I realized every single door was open. Now, we have self-closing doors, so someone must have propped the doors open or been holding them that way. The lights were off in each room, and the dark doorways stretched down the hallway, seeming to never end. Blondie and Leather Jacket walked down the hallway. He was saying something to her, and she was slowly nodding, but I couldn't tell what. Now, I knew some of those rooms were occupied, so why weren't they doing anything? Why weren't they fluttering around in confusion, asking who the hell opened their door at 3:30 a.m.? But I didn't have much time to wonder, because the lights flickered and then went out. The screen was black. My heart was pounding now so loudly that I could hear it in the silence of the room. I shook the mouse with sweaty fingers, as if I could somehow prod the lights back on. Finally, they flicked back on. All the doors were closed now. But now Leather Jacket was carrying something. A small bag. It must have been filled with something heavy, because he leaned to one side as he continued down the hallway. They got back in the elevator. Blondie was sobbing, now her head in her hands. He turned to her and began talking. I turned on a microphone and listened. Done now. All we got to do is take care of the girl at the front desk, and destroy the security footage. The blood drained from my head, and then I bolted up. I ran out of the hotel into the darkness. In front of me stood Route 52, still as a country path. The neon lights of the town below shimmered like twinkling little stars. I ran towards the town. At the 24-hour diner, I called the police. When they got there, Blondie and Leather Jacket were gone, as was the security footage. And every single person who occupied Floor 4 was missing. The Loud family on their way to Disney World. The Don Juan and his two lady friends. The old lady with the dog and the Metallica guy with the loud headphones. All vanished. They did find one thing, though. A Southfield napkin. Written in pink lipstick were the words, "Help me. 7th story. A man watched me outside my hotel room. I think he was trying to get in. I was traveling alone for a work conference and booked a comfort in near the convention center. Nothing fancy. Just clean, cheap, and close. The lobby smelled faintly like old coffee and lemon-scented floor cleaner. The guy at the front desk barely looked up when I checked in. Just slid the key card across the counter and muttered, "Room 309. Elevators to the left." The elevator ride up was uneventful. No one else got in with me. When the doors slid open on the 3rd floor, I immediately noticed how quiet it was. Too quiet. No distant TVs, no doors slamming, no muffled conversations. Just a long hallway with patterned carpet and yellowish lights buzzing faintly. My room was at the far end. 309, past all the other identical doors. As I rolled my suitcase down the hall, I noticed something. At the very end of the hallway, standing near the stairwell door, there was a man. He was facing me, not moving, not doing anything, just standing there, watching. I slowed for a second, confused. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he was a guest locked out. I kept walking, trying not to stare. As I got closer to my door, I glanced back. The man turned without a sound and slipped through the stairwell door. Gone. I shook it off, told myself it was nothing. Maybe he did not want to make it awkward. Maybe he was embarrassed. Inside the room, everything felt a little too still. The air smelled faintly of old detergent, like the carpets had been cleaned but not aired out. I noticed the desk chair was turned to face the window, not where housekeeping usually leaves it. A small detail, but it stuck with me. I turned on the TV for background noise, tossed my bag onto the bed, and settled in. The evening passed without anything else. I ordered delivery and ate on the bed, flipping through cable channels. Every now and then, I thought I heard faint footsteps in the hallway. Very soft, not constant, always stopping when I muted the TV to listen. Around 1:50 a.m., the room phone rang. The sharp, old-fashioned ring cut through the quiet like a knife. I sat up startled. I answered. "Hello." Static. A faint crackling sound. "Hello," I said again, louder. There was breathing on the other end. Not a voice. Just steady, audible breathing. Then a click. Deadline. I hung up, staring at the phone. It could have been a prank. A crossed wire. Old phone system. Hotels are not exactly known for perfect maintenance. I lay back down, facing the door. Maybe 20 minutes later, there was a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Measured. Not frantic. Not playful. I sat up and listened. Another knock. I got up slowly, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No footsteps. No elevator ding. No stairwell door swinging shut. I stood there longer than I should have, holding my breath, waiting. Nothing. I backed away and grabbed my cell. Called the front desk. "Comfort Inn, front desk," the same man answered. "Someone knocked on my door," I said quietly. "And someone called my room. Room number 309. A pause. "Sir, external calls cannot be connected to guest rooms," he said. "Only internal." Another pause. "Stay inside your room. I will send security up." About 5 minutes later, I heard the elevator ding faintly. Then slow, heavy footsteps coming down the hall. There was a knock. Normal this time. "Hotel security, sir." I looked through the peephole. One staff member. Middle-aged guy. Black polo with a hotel logo. Radio on his hip. I opened the door with the chain still latched. He asked if I wanted him to walk the hallway and check the floor. I said yes. He disappeared down the hallway, moving slowly, checking doors, looking into the stairwell. He even checked the emergency exit at the far end. When he came back, he shook his head. "No one out here now. Could be someone messing around," he said. "Happens sometimes late at night. You should keep your deadbolt locked," he added. "I have," I said. He gave a short nod and walked back toward the elevator. I watched until the doors closed. I locked everything again and sat back down on the bed. I left the TV muted. I wanted to hear everything. Around 3 a.m., I heard it again. The door handle moving. Slow at first, then a little firmer, like someone trying to see if it was unlocked. I got up carefully and looked through the peephole. It was covered, like something was pressed against it from the other side. I backed away immediately, heart pounding. I grabbed the nearest chair, jammed it under the door handle, and sprinted to the room phone. I called the front desk. "Someone is at my door," I hissed. "Trying to get in." "Stay inside. We are sending security up right now," the man said. Less than 2 minutes later, I heard footsteps. A knock. "Hotel security, sir." I checked the peephole carefully. The cover was gone. The same staff member was outside. I opened the door with the chain still on. "There was no one here when I got up," he said. "No one in the hallway." I demanded they check the cameras. He agreed and called the front desk on his radio. After a short wait, he came back. "The feed is down," he said. "Wiring issue. Cameras on this floor have been glitching. They are supposed to fix it tomorrow." I stared at him, not knowing what to say. I relocked everything, reinforced the chair, and sat on the bed, wide awake. An hour passed. Around 4 a.m., I realized I was not going to sleep. I decided to go downstairs to the lobby. Maybe just sit there until sunrise. I grabbed my room key, unlocked the door, and stepped into the hallway. It was completely silent. Still, I started walking toward the elevators. About halfway there, I glanced down the opposite end of the hall. The man was there, head to toe in black, standing perfectly still, watching me. I froze. He took one step forward, then another. Then he broke into a full sprint straight toward me, and I ran. 8th story. I work at a hotel, and I've been watching a man on the cameras run on the hotel gym's treadmill for hours. I work the graveyard shift at a small, usually mostly empty hotel just off the highway. The hours suck, obviously, but other than that, it's a pretty cushy job. I clock in, settle down in the back office, and watch downloaded movies or shows on my laptop. The connection sucks back there, but it's a place I can sit out of view of the guests and relax. So I just prepare accordingly. Periodically, I'll glance at the CCTV monitor hung on the wall in front of my desk. Mostly it's just to see if there's anyone at the front desk that needs anything, or to see when my coworkers arrive in the morning so I can brush the Cheeto dust off my shirt and pretend like I wasn't half asleep only moments before they arrived. The cameras show several other areas of the hotel, too. Each stairwell, several shots of the parking lot outside, and each exit door, the kitchen, laundry room, the lobby, and a few other areas. There's also a camera in the gym, but no one ever uses it. The hotel I work for isn't really known for their stellar cleanliness or functioning facilities. Our pool hasn't been open to guests in months, and our gym has like one functioning treadmill, a couple weights, and I think a pull-up bar. I've been working here for a few months, and I don't think I've ever been inside. Anyway, at about 2 a.m., 2 hours into my shift, I glance up from my show to check the cameras and notice that the light in the gym is on. The grainy footage shows a man, average-looking, maybe on the older and fatter side, running on the one working treadmill. I don't recall checking him in, but I'm not the one who usually handles that stuff. Most people are in before my shift anyway. Whatever I thought, I can hardly judge him. Looks like he's doing more exercise than I ever do. I go back to my show, getting up once to grab another bag of chips from the concession area. When I get back, I check the time, 2:32 a.m. The one instance of actual work I do starts at 3 when I run the nightly audit on the computers, so I have to start keeping track of the time more closely around then. I spare a glance towards the cameras, and I'm surprised to see that the man is still running on the treadmill. Well, probably not still. right? Like he probably took a break to do other workouts, and now he's back to running. Or maybe he's been running this whole time. I don't know shit about exercise. In the crappy video quality, I could still see that he was sweating pretty hard. His shirt was almost an entire shade darker, and his thinning hair was visibly slicked back. At the time, all I thought was, good for him, I guess. Maybe this old fat guy should be motivating me to start working out for real. I finish another episode before getting up to start the audit process, which usually takes me a couple minutes. Before I left the office, I checked the cameras again just because I didn't like being surprised by a guest waiting for me at the desk whenever I went up. My eye immediately caught onto the treadmill guy. Not just because he was still running, which was odd enough. I mean, it had been a full hour of, I'm pretty sure, nonstop running at a pretty quick pace for a guy like him. No, it's because this time he was staring straight at me. Well, not me, but the camera in the corner of the gym. I froze. We locked eyes, even though I obviously knew he couldn't see me. He was dead-eyed with a slack, exhausted expression on his face. And yet, he was still running, his arms no longer swinging along with his run, but instead hanging limply at his sides. I stood there for a long few seconds, confused and creeped out by what I was seeing. Right before I decided to write this guy off as a weirdo and turn away from the monitor to go do my job, he smiled at me. At the camera, I mean. This creepy, wide smile that didn't really reach his eyes. And the worst part was that his tongue just sort of limply flopped out of his mouth, as if the only thing holding it in was his closed lips. It just bounced around like he had no control over it, moving to the rhythm of his jog. It was also way too long, like a normal tongue would just stay in a person's mouth if it was completely relaxed, right? Needless to say, I was really creeped out by this guy. I don't know how long he was staring at the camera in the corner, or why he decided to smile right as I noticed him doing it. Obviously, it was just weird timing, or he probably just decided to mess with whoever might be watching the cams right at the moment that I looked up at him. But somewhere deep inside me, I felt like I was actually being watched. It was about to be 3 a.m., and if I didn't have the audit done by 3:15, I'd get another write-up and probably yelled at my boss about how it's literally the only thing I have to do all night. As anxious as this guy was making me feel, I didn't want to take my eyes off of him in case. I didn't even know why, honestly. However, I swallowed my nerves and tore my eyes away from the screen and fast-walked my way to the front desk with my mind made up to do the audit as quickly as possible. Let me describe the layout real quick here. The back office is around the corner from the front desk. Down the hallway, past the elevators, the lobby where we do breakfast, the pool, and the laundry room is where the gym is. It's not the most well-designed hotel, and there's a few twists and turns leading to the gym at the other end of the first floor that makes directing guests verbally an annoying task. That also meant that as I stepped out to the front desk, I didn't have a straight shot to be able to see the gym. On the one hand, I was relieved that I was kind of far away from the weirdo, and on the other, I was made even more anxious that he was now no longer in my sights. I booted up the ancient computer and started printing reports, filing them away in various folders with one hand and signing stuff that needed to be signed with the other. I'm sure I got some stuff wrong, but my priority was finishing this quickly so I could return to the office. I felt exposed out here. Couldn't see anything but the lobby, the sound of some pop radio playing way too loud, drowning out any other potential noise. Every second for the 10 minutes that I was out there, I felt like something really wrong was about to happen. I had to bring some of these reports back to the office to file them away while the audit process was running on the computers. Normally, I just did this at the end of the process to not make as many trips back and forth. And because as soon as the process ended, I had to update the system to roll over to the next day. If I didn't do that part within a minute of the process ending, the whole thing would get messed up. This time, though, as soon as the computer started processing, I raced back to the office to check on the cameras again, if only just to confirm that he was still doing the same thing. The first thing I noticed when I got back was that the light in the gym had turned off. I hadn't heard the heavy gym door open and close from the front desk, but maybe the stereo was just too loud to hear it. I began scanning the rest of the displays, trying to find him on his way back to his room, in the stairwell or the elevators or wherever, just to give me some peace of mind. At first, I didn't see him anywhere on the cameras until my eyes glanced back at the gym display. It was subtle, but the dim light on the treadmill display that indicated that it was in use looked like it was still on. I thought that maybe he just forgot to turn it off when he left, and then I saw him. He was still in there, still running. I just hadn't seen him at first in the dark. His body was barely lit by the treadmill, but that's not why I noticed him. His eyes were two pinpricks of light reflecting off the display, still staring directly at me. I choked back a gasp when I saw that. Why had the lights shut off while he was still in there? They were motion sensors. Maybe if he was standing perfectly still, they'd turn off eventually, but there he was, still running at the same pace. He was clearly exhausted, his whole body drooping forward as his arms swung back and forth. But his legs continued moving at the same speed as they were an hour ago when I first noticed him, and his head was craned at an unnatural angle to keep staring at me. In the back of my mind, I considered that maybe this man needed help, some sort of mental illness thing that made him keep running, but my fear kept me rooted to the spot, not breaking eye contact. I still had the audit process to complete, but there was no way I was taking my eyes off of him again. What the hell? I muttered under my breath, but as the last word left my mouth, he suddenly stopped running and fell off of the treadmill, landing headfirst on the tile floor. The cameras didn't record sound, but I could swear I heard crack. In my shock, it took way too long to react to the lights coming back on and him standing with his neck clearly broken and his head limply hanging backwards off of it. As soon as he stood, he ran out of the room, passing the laundry camera, the pool, and making it halfway through the lobby before I broke out of my paralysis to run and slam the door to the office shut, locking it in the process. A slam against the door shook the office 2 seconds after I had closed it, and then another, and another, like he was using his body as a battering ram. I looked back at the cameras, but there were none pointing directly at the back office's entrance. The only thing I could see was the trail he left of blood and what looked like shit all the way from the gym to the lobby. The entire room shook with the force of this thing slamming itself against the door, and every call I tried to make to the police failed again and again. The door was heavy, but I didn't have faith in it holding up for that long if he kept going at this rate. I just kept looking back and forth between the door and the cameras, selfishly hoping that a guest would notice the commotion and draw this thing's attention away from me. I don't know what would happen to them if they did, but at the moment, I was only focused on getting out of the hotel. After a few minutes, 3, to be exact, the banging stopped. It took a second for me to notice, but once I did, my eyes shot to the monitor. He was definitely still there, since there were no bloody footprints leading away from the back office. I wish I could forget just how long I stood there, staring at the screen and willing it to show this thing walk away. But the display on the bottom right of the monitor showed me each excruciating minute, which is how I knew exactly what time another guest started making his way down to the lobby. At 6:28 a.m., I noticed movement on the camera that was pointing at the third-floor elevator. A young man, dressed in workout clothes, carrying a gym towel. My heart sank, and I began to think of ways to warn him or somehow prevent this thing from doing whatever it was trying to do. I could have pulled the fire alarm. I could have grabbed a chair or something to use as a weapon and jumped out at it. Hell, I could have at least stopped watching. I didn't do any of those things. I watched as the man entered the elevator at the 3rd floor and descended down to the lobby. The second those elevator doors opened, the creature that had been standing in front of my office door for the past 3 hours and 18 minutes made its move. With a speed I could barely keep up with over several camera displays, its mangled body ran on perfectly functioning legs towards the guest, slamming into walls and leaving a bloody imprint on them as it went. The guest made it 1 foot off of the elevator before this thing tackled him back into it. I only saw a spray of blood hit the opposite wall as the elevator door slowly closed again. This was my chance to get out of the hotel and never look back, but again I found myself rooted to the ground in fear. I couldn't bring myself to tear my eyes away from the monitor, So I watched as the elevator door slowly opened once again. The guest walked out, just the same as he had walked in. He had the same chipper smile on his face, and I watched as he walked past the front desk, past the lobby and the pool and the laundry room, all the way to the gym. I was out the door and on my way to never coming back again before I could see him enter. I'm riding this in my car a few miles away from the hotel because I couldn't stand to go home yet, but I figured I should make my version of events public just in case. I know that man is running on the treadmill right now, and my coworkers or whoever else comes into the hotel next is going to have to deal with what I went through all over again, but I can't bring myself to care. I even feel too claustrophobic to stay inside my car at this point after spending so long in the back office. My legs are still shaking, and the only thing I want to do right now is run as fast and as far away as I can. Ninth story. Something strange happened in my hotel room. So I was overseas on business last week, and we stayed at a pretty nice hotel in a mid-sized city. It's not the richest place in the world, and we were advised to take precautions, use the safe overnight, make sure the door is locked from the inside, keep together outside the hotel, etc. I'm always fairly cautious anyway when I stay in hotels anywhere, and I like to push a chair up against the door handle as an extra precaution before going to bed at nights. Sometimes I'll wedge a shoe under the handle, but in this place, the back of the chair went right up to the handle. So that was fine. This room had a bed on legs, so I had a little look under there each night as well, just in case a robber or someone was hiding, which I'd read about happening in this particular country. On top of that, I'd quickly check the wardrobe. Call me paranoid, but doing all that helps me sleep more soundly. Anyway, forward to the third night. When I came into the room after a day, working the aircon wasn't turning on. Reading the panel beneath, it said, "If the unit doesn't switch on, check that the balcony door is closed." Sure enough, it was slightly ajar. I looked out onto the narrow balcony, not much more than a ledge, which was completely empty, slid the door shut, and then the aircon started working again. I figured the cleaning staff must have left the door open to air the room. Anyway, I went through my ritual of putting the chair against the door, checking under the bed, looking in the wardrobe. All seemed clear, and I went to bed. But I had a really fitful night, which I put down to stress from the work I was doing out there, and had a bad dream that there was someone looking over me muttering in my ear. Waking from a nightmare around 4 a.m., I sat up in bed, but couldn't see anything. I thought I heard some kind of shuffling noise, but nothing happened, and when I turned the lights on, all seemed normal. Nothing was missing, and my valuables were in the safe anyway. We traveled home the next day without a problem. I unpacked my things, realizing that I left one of my t-shirts behind in the room, but otherwise all was good, until I reviewed my photo reel that evening. I had taken a photo of the room on the first day, as I always do, as I'll send it to my folks. The photo showed the view from the door, the bed, coffee machine, panel TV, and the work desk which comes out into the center of the room, just beyond the bed, and the big windows beyond. Behind the desk, between it and the window, you can see the chair, the area under the desk being a clear space so you can see the chair's base and wheels. You're probably thinking that's not strange at all, and it's not. But here's the thing. I also took a photo on the morning of the day I checked out, which was directly after my fitful sleep the night before. And the room looks exactly the same, except for one detail. This time, the area under the desk isn't clear. Instead, the space between tabletop and floor is covered by a panel. 10th story. I live in an old hotel, and I found something I shouldn't have. I live in a small town near the ocean in Northern California. For those of you who have been in the area, I'm sort of near Fort Bragg and Mendocino. Like all the towns around here, my town started to support the loggers that cut down all of the old forest post-gold rush. Most days it's beautiful in a dreary sort of way. Lots of mist and ocean breeze. Other days it can get pretty depressing. A lot of people move away because they can't deal with the lack of sun. It has never really bothered me. Back around the turn of the century, one of the logging magnates who lived in the area got it into his head to build a hotel. It wasn't like the bed and breakfasts which now the coast. For what I can tell, it was more like a retreat for the wealthy of San Francisco. A lot of people wanted to get out of the city after the big 1906 quake, so they flocked to the area for some rest and relaxation. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's called the Atterbury Hotel. I'm too young to have ever seen the hotel in its heyday. Most of what I know about it comes from what you just hear growing up in my town. These days, what is left over of the hotel from the fire of 45 still towers over the main street from a seaside cliff just north. All 5 stories are painted white, including the bell tower built high up in the center of the facade. I'm sure many years ago, only the wealthy and privileged would get to stay there. But now the only people who check in are tourists who don't know any better and well me. Everyone else prefers to stay away. I don't think it's ever been renovated. I guess I've always found a romance in the old behemoth, or maybe something called to me. But after I moved back home from college, I checked into the hotel with the intention of staying for a week or 2 while I found an apartment, and I have ended up staying for 3 months and counting. They let me pay week to week, which is nice as I'm still unsure of where I'll end up. It's cheap and, for the most part, clean. I do have to deal with some roaches and a weird old bellman who walks around at all times of the night, but it's okay with me. I just enjoy coming back home to the old lobby and elevator. I'm on the 5th floor. It's fun to imagine how it used to be back in the good old days when men and women arrived in Model Ts and drank champagne on the red velvet lounge chairs. You can still see the glamour that used to be here in the dusty chandeliers, cracked crown molding, and tarnished silver banisters. Sometimes when I can't sleep at night, which is getting more and more frequent, I like to go exploring. Not all of the floors are open to the hotel guests, but given that I'm a resident, I like to think I'm above those rules. For the first couple of months, I stuck to the main floors. One time, I even discovered an indoor pool. The pale teal tiles which lined it were practically all broken, and water stains marred the walls and floors, but I like to think I could see how it used to look when it was new and gleaming. It was only a couple of weeks ago that I started exploring deeper. I bet not many of you realize how much goes on behind the scenes of a big hotel like this, but let me tell you, it's insane. At the Atterbury, several floors of pipes, storage, and who knows what descend underneath the ground floor, so no one had to see the hustle and bustle of working-class employees. I discovered the underground labyrinth one night when I woke up from a nightmare and needed to walk off some adrenaline. A walk around the hotel usually can calm down my racing mind, so I put on my sneakers and a shirt and grabbed my headlamp. Most of the hotel isn't lit at night. The lobby was empty, which was pretty usual. Only a few townsfolk work here these days, so I decided to check out what was behind the check-in counter. Who would know? There wasn't much in the back room, just a wall of dusty old keys, stacks of files, and a black door. Before I even touched the door, I could feel a damp breeze coming from the crack, and identified it as the source of the exceptionally pervasive musty odor that clung onto the lobby. Behind the door was a wooden staircase which led to another landing below. Broken furniture littered the ground, mostly old office chairs and a scuffed coffee table. The door below was heavy, and I struggled to unjam it from its frame. It popped open loudly, exposing another dark hallway beyond. I felt my heart begin to race, which was unusual. Most of the time when I explore the hotel, I felt a sort of calm. After all, the hotel is only a mile or so from my childhood home. It was like exploring my backyard. But this was different. It was like I was entering a whole other state, far away from where I just was. Do you ever feel like you're not you in the middle of the night? Like your mind is taken over by someone more impulsive and somehow more numb? That's how I felt right then, like I was aware that daytime me would have hoofed it back up to my room, but somehow my feet were already stepping into the black. The door opened into a long cement hallway. I couldn't tell how long because my light could only reach so far, but the sound from my steps seemed to echo on forever. Dampness penetrated my bones, and I felt both hot and cold at the same time. I'm sure I was just imagining things because, as I mentioned, I was feeling kind of out of it. The light from the lobby filtered down to the open door, so I could find the door again if I got lost in the dark hallway. But even so, I mentally noted its location before setting off. There wasn't much to look at. Pipes followed the corner of the hall, and occasionally there was a broken piece of furniture or pallets of dusty cans of food. I remember the nasty meatballs I ate at the nearly empty restaurant upstairs the other day and shuddered. I continued for another few minutes and had just decided to turn back when I heard a sound from far down the hallway. It was like a hissing, high and penetrating. It wasn't a snake because the hissing didn't stop. It just got louder and eventually deeper. It got so deep that it began to reverberate in my chest. I stopped dead in my tracks and felt sweat drip down the sides of my face. I hadn't realized I was sweating. I hadn't realized how hot it was. The hiss was no longer a hiss, but a sigh, coming closer. Finally, my instincts kicked in and I ran back toward the door. Whatever was switched on my survival mode, and I knew if I was going to stay alive, I needed to get the hell out of there. It was probably a fifth of a mile away, but I was still too far to see it. As I ran, the sound stopped abruptly, and it was silent save for the noises of my sprinting. I had a brief moment of relief before I heard the worst sound of all. Other footsteps. I was running as fast as I could, but the footfalls sounded like they were right behind me, shoes slapping against the damp cement. It wasn't just one person either. It sounded like at least 10 people sprinted behind me. I didn't dare turn around. Maybe it was my imagination, or maybe they were chasing me, but I didn't care. Finally, I saw the door, still open, come into view. I've never been a runner, but I was going so fast, I practically flew inside and slammed the door behind me. As soon as it closed, the door shook with the impact of several bodies running at full speed. I fell back against the broken office furniture and prayed to God the door would hold. After a moment, the slamming stopped, and all was quiet. Only my heavy breathing and the distant ticking of the grandfather clock in the lobby broke the silence. I felt like sobbing or screaming or just plain passing out. I stayed like that for a good 5 minutes before I heard the wooden staircase creak with someone's body weight. "What are you doing here?" the old bellman asked as he peered down at me. I jumped as if electrocuted. I'm sorry," I sputtered as I ran by him toward the lobby. I had no idea how to respond. How could I even begin to describe what had happened? I made it back to my room in record time and slammed the door behind me. The sun was just beginning to rise. How long had I been down there? I spent the next few hours trying to calm down, but wasn't successful. I could still feel the tunnel beneath me, calling me down. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Till the end, subscribe to Horror in Detail for more videos. Drop your suggestions in comment section.